So I made a mistake of falling asleep around 8 p.m. or so. Woke up at about 1:30, thinking about, worrying about the world and everything else in it. It's 2 a.m. probably, and here I am, drinking coffee. Insanity. There's also a major weather change. Currently, we're going from humid, rainy, I don't know what the barometer reading was, to dry and windy. And when that happens, it's kind of hard for me to sleep. I think I have a barometer in my head. Whether I could read it or not, well, it influences me for sure. Anyway, who's ready for another ramble? This is Alexander Dugin on Russian state TV, standing and watching his daughter burn inside of their vehicle, allegedly.
And Ukraine, capital Kyiv, totally failed to take the city. Dugina in a car bomb explosion. She was the daughter of Alexander Dugin, a Russian ultra-nationalist ideologue and Putin ally. Russian state television showing video.
Why don't they call him a Satanist or neo-pagan or something along those lines, right? Why don't they just call him that which he is? Do they not know? Are they protecting him to some degree? Yes, they're enemies of humanity, whether it's the American, Western, Eastern, whatever the hell have you elites, and they're the enemies of one another, but they hate us more. They have a lot more in common, and so much as they fight amongst each other, they also unite against us, in my opinion. Now, it's not necessarily fair to judge someone according to your own standards, emotions, what you think you would have done when you were never in that situation to actually know what you would have done. But my instinct, if that's my daughter in that car, I'm running there and I don't know, completely irrational and insane, but I'm at the very least getting closer and looking to. People are holding me back. You know what I mean? People are fucking holding me back. I'm not standing there holding my head as if shouting, if only internally, what have I done? What have I done? Now, it could be because it's his fault to a large degree because he raised that Satanist bitch and now she's burning in hell. Or he had her sacrificed. This is just my opinion. I have no evidence for it. Personally, I don't think Ukraine did this. I think Papa sacrificed her to, because that's what he does. Well, that's what he's saying about, right? This is he's saying about sacrificing little girls to the devil as an offering, right? So that he could be in communion with whatever that beast's name was. I don't remember now. It's all out there. You could go listen. I mean, I stay away from that shit, but you're free to go and it's on YouTube. Listen to him reciting his Satanist nonsense. It wasn't but like what, days after this, weeks after this, that he was back on TV or the tube, just doing the usual. You know what I mean? I think he sacrificed. That's just my opinion. Or maybe this is part of some sort of internal strife amongst the elites, and maybe somebody was trying to get him. You know, maybe, I don't know. Who knows? He just doesn't strike me as the type of guy to give a fuck, especially here.
Video of him watching his daughter's vehicle in flames.
It's interesting how these days a lot of the reasons why, an excuse, I guess you could say, why I hang out with adults is because we got that one thing in common, right? Children. Um, Birthday parties, births, things of that nature bring us together. Whereas otherwise, we're so busy and just doing our own thing where we probably wouldn't, right? And people who don't have children, I tend not to associate with as much. So I was at a birthday party just a few days ago, hanging out with some Canadians, and I asked the father, just kind of in jest, just to kind of shoot the shit, see what's up. And I know him well enough to know what he's about, but I just kind of poked him a little bit, being like, "So how do you feel about being the 51st state?" And unemotionally, just straight off the cuff, matter of fact, like, duh, he began to utter North, and then I joined in because I knew where he was going, American Union. It's very telling how the truth movement has basically been co-opted and forgot about what it's all about. And those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, North American Union, the Eurasian Union, right? That which Dugin is all about. Those bodies, states, if you will, conglomerates of states, that was a conspiracy theory pushed by Alex Jones right around the time I stopped listening to Alex Jones, or right before that time. It must be 10, 15 years ago. I don't remember exactly. I don't listen to Alex Jones anymore. Here and there, I'll check him out. And so I don't know, but I bet you he no longer talks about that. Right? I bet you he no longer talks about that. So for those of you who don't know, the New World Order was going to be, the North American Union, basically 1984, George Orwell's 1984, right? Some kind of a Eurasian Union and whatever else have you. Basically, the sovereignty of individual states, countries was going to be submitted to a larger governing authority, right? Like kind of like the EU, Russian Federation, right? The United States. And with that, we were going to get increasingly more, the world was going to get increasingly more authoritarian, um, more collectivist, and the individual was going to lose liberty, right? It was going to be the end of the liberal world order, and we're going to get the new authoritarian world order. I was talking to another parent because he had another child, just born a few days ago. An estranged friend, I would have to say, unfortunately, who was one of those people who was very clued up to what's happening in the world and just had a wealth of information that in many instances was news even to me, right? Someone who's dabbled in conspiracy theories for a very, very long time. And he was making a lot of sense, right? And then came Trump, Putin, invasion of Ukraine, and he actually happened to be on the Alex Jones show. Happened with another, in my opinion, I'm not saying he is, but like Dugin, with another Satanist or neo-pagan or called whatever the fuck type of character. And these days, his geopolitical analysis is just, it's mush. It's garbage. It's as if we had forgotten about the New World Order, George Orwell's 1984, and North American Union, things of that nature. And I see this desire to try to rectify Trump good because, he did some good things, like, he smacked the gays around and shit. And, he destroyed LGBTQ and all this fucking nonsense. So there's this desire to find good in someone who's obviously a degenerate, morally corrupt, Zog, authoritarian, um, just a bad, bad, bad character. And this is the truther movement and how it's been co-opted. And it began with calling them truthers, right? Just like calling people who eat meat carnists. It's this perversion of who the people are, what their goals are, and looking to discredit them with, by co-opting, in my opinion, characters like Alex Jones and making truth, skewing the truth so far to where it's no longer believable because it isn't true anymore, right? So I've been trying to, at least lately, to walk this line between conspiracy theory and being reasonable and rational, because it seems to me that people have been so polarized and the truther movement has been pushed so far into the extremes that it no longer really makes sense, or it didn't. It's dead now, I think. But the few people that still talk some sense have been so radicalized that they're just incredible. No one believes them, and that was the goal, I believe, was to co-opt these good ideas and turn these people into lunatics, right? Or at least to have the rest of society perceive them as such, so that nobody would be on the right path anymore. And again, truth would be co-opted. And that's exactly what's happening. Truth Social, come on, man. The biggest liar on the biggest stage, right? Well, he runs Truth Social and he calls everybody else fake news, so he's telling the truth. I mean, it's straight out of fucking 1984. The Ministry of Truth, Donald Trump, Truth Social. The fuck out of here. I try to be reasonable and rational, and I try to see the good in a clearly evil, degenerate individual like Donald Trump, because I believe bad people can be motivated to do good or steered to do good. You could co-opt, right? A narcissist like Donald Trump, because ultimately, at the end of the day, he doesn't really have any values, and his value is just, his only value is to make himself feel good. So you could pat him on the back, you could, you know, give him a little nookie, slap his butt, maybe give him a high five, kiss him on the forehead, tell him some nice things, and then he may actually do the right thing because you stroke his ego, basically. And I think that's partly how Donald Trump was convinced to become who he is. But maybe I'll get to that in a little bit later. So going back to the people who, for example, still remember what the North American Union is supposed to be, the conspiracy theory, right? And shout out to Rand Paul, who likewise was called a lunatic and crazy conspiracy theorist, who was one person on that level who was actually talking about this, and the Amero, right? Something that Alex Jones had talked about before he basically got co-opted. I mean, that was one of the biggest hoaxes ever insofar as this so-called cancel culture, right? The guy was taken off social media, supposedly. I mean, he's everywhere. While getting, Hillary Clinton and the like talking about him on the biggest stages possible. Like, he got so much free advertisement from these people, right? He sold out. But they made him look like some kind of freedom fighter and some kind of persecuted individual, right? Kind of like Donald Trump with, his court cases and this so-called persecution. I mean, did he ever go to prison? Where's the persecution? He got immunity, right? It's all fake. But they have to play this game because not everybody in the FBI, CIA, US government, not everybody is bought and paid for, or at the very least, they're not bought and paid for by the same people. So they have to do this whole dog and pony show, and they have to manipulate people to believe that it's true, right? To some degree, anyway. So, yeah, anyway, even my Canadian friend who just immediately called it out for what it was, right? North American Union. His idea, why he's here in Ecuador also, but his idea is that the world's just going to go to shit. It's going to fall apart. People are going to be robbing each other. It's going to be mayhem, anarchy, complete and total breakdown of supply chains. So in order to make it through those times, you have to get armed, grow your own food, be as self-sufficient as possible, and all this other stuff, right? Now, maybe he's right, but I don't think so. Because if we get to that point, then their plan is failing, right? This has to be, it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, and the changes are going to be rapid, but this has to be as smooth of a change as possible in order for the people to buy it, right? Because if you destabilize the whole system in that sort of way that a lot of people believe it will be destabilized because that's what they want, supposedly, then everything goes to shit, and you can't make, all of a sudden cash becomes king, right? Gold becomes king, bullets, all these, the grid goes down, the internet stops functioning, there's no smart cities, you can't do transactions unless it's cash, you can't charge taxes. The whole system, their system of control will break down. They don't want that. No, the transition has to be smooth. So even those people who have the right idea, they're so extreme and so paranoid and freaked out, they start talking like lunatics and nobody takes them seriously. Because if you think about this rationally, even if you if you accept that there is a group of individuals or organized groups that want to, bring about the new world order, it's not going to be done in that way. Now there's going to be pockets of that for sure, like parts of Ukraine, temporarily there's, or for long stretches of time depending on your view, they have no electricity and the grid goes down and you have to use cash, and maybe you have no internet access or whatever. But no, not really. I mean, you got Starlink and all this stuff. But yeah, there's going to be pockets of mayhem and, second or even first world going through third world conditions. That's going to happen, but it's not going to happen on a massive scale, because if the whole system goes down, then they lost, right? And they have to rebuild from scratch. And if you're rebuilding from scratch, you're given opportunity. It becomes not a level playing field, but something closer to that, where all kinds of factions and groups could rise up and grab power. So yeah, it's not going to be that. So even people who believe and they're on the right track, they've been so uh, their brains, if you will, their minds have been co-opted by blowhards and shills such as Alex Jones, who are just such who are predicting this catastrophe and basically scaring people into being completely irrational and detaching from. That's another thing that they're doing. They're taking these people that are awake, intelligent, and could actually make a change. How do you make a change? People keep asking me. Well, the most important thing is to speak the truth, because if you speak the truth, then you're a morally correct individual. That just goes hand in hand. And get into politics and don't sell out. That's it. It's simple. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's very simple. Speak the truth always. Go into politics and don't sell out. Keep speaking the truth. Keep being true. That's it. Right? You still have democracy. That's how simple it is. But yeah, these people are being told to detach from the system because they could, if there were enough of them, they could bring it down, or slow down the process at the very least. They could destroy it from within. So they're being told, go live on a farm, raise your own food, be self sufficient because the end of the world is coming, this type of shit. Well, I mean, I guess in a sense it is. But yeah, so that's that. The truth movement is dead. It's basically dead, right? Because all the truthers, well, first they were slandered with that. They have either been co-opted, bought and paid for. Like, look at someone like Tim Pool, right? Now, maybe I'm completely wrong, and he was a shill from the beginning, but he seemed like a grassroots type of a guy. Went from went from Occupy Wall Street, which was, a little do you know, right wing, um, pro freedom, pro liberty, even if it wasn't sold as such. But that's maybe because it was co opted before it even got off the ground. Was pro the individual, pro the people, Occupy Wall Street movement that was against corporate government, right? Fascism. And went from that to being a complete and utter Trumpian imperialist. Like, just flipped completely, right? And the whole thing with them being exposed as like Russian shills, that shit was so weak, man. That shit was so weak. These people were traitors. They should be in prison. There's no like, oh, I didn't know, and no, 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 no. All these people should be in prison, and yet they're not. It's as if there was some push to rid the U.S. political sphere from these infiltrators, because there are still some good people left in the government, or at the very least, bad people with completely different ideas that could be co-opted by the populace to do the right thing, if only for a little bit. But they're not powerful enough to really get these people and all of them, right? Or it's just another dog and pony show. I'm not sure, but at the end of the day, whatever the motivation behind all of that was, it may turn out to be just that, right? Because where are all these other obvious Russian shills, influencers, Russian assets in American media, whether it be social or Fox News, right? Why is nobody going after them, right? There are so many obvious Russian shills just in YouTube. It's so obvious. And yet no one's going after them, right? Why? Well, because they're pushing the same narrative that Trump is. Trump is spitting, in many instances, just straight up Russian propaganda, lies. And so are they, right? So where this is the truth now, I guess, and everything else is fake news, right? So, for example, the encirclement of Ukrainian troops in Kursk, right? Total and utter Rus prop that not even Russian mill bloggers say is true, right? Is being pushed by the Kremlin and the president of the United States. Just total and utter lie. And then you have these channels, like, for example, right? Just one example, Conversation Among Ruins, pushing that same party line, right? And yeah, they put a sad face, they play some, you know, melancholy music, they put on sad faces, they pretend like they care about people's lives while they're just spitting straight lies, video after video after video after video, just pushing Russian propaganda, pretending like they care about the victims in this war when there are no victims. In some of these instances, they're just lying to you about, for example, this encirclement. They're lying about Korean troops not being in Kursk. They just lie and lie and lie and lie, and nobody in their, they probably police their comment sections, but no one in their comment sections calls them out on their lies, and they're proved to be wrong time and time and time again, and the subscription count just keeps going up, the views just keep going up, right? Like some of the most obvious Russian assets you'll have, but why aren't they getting pulled? Well, probably because they're not just Russian assets, they're New World Order assets. That's who they are. And that's where someone like Trump and Putin align, right? They're here to grab up as much land as possible. They're imperialists. And you have to assume, and this had been assumed from the very beginning for obvious reasons, right? And with that, what you're going to get is less liberty, right? Because this is the new world order, right? The liberal world order is dying, is being stepped on, destroyed, and Trump, Putin, Z, maybe other players are ushering in the new world order, or killing the liberal world order. And well, what's the antithesis of that, right? Some type of authoritarianism. I mean, in order to take over a lot of these states, countries, well, you have to murder people, right? You have to take away their liberty, their rights. You have to kill them. You you have to completely and utterly reject the rules-based liberal world order. So with imperialism has always, right, been synonymous with the destruction of human liberty, at least for the masses. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be thus, right? Because I've always talked about how it doesn't really matter whether you have a democracy or a monarchy, right? If we put those two at both ends of the spectrum, right? It really doesn't matter what the system is, insofar as the people in it speak the truth, meaning they're morally correct and they live truth, right? They're godly people. So long as they're good people, then it doesn't matter. They're going to do the right thing, right? It doesn't matter what the system is. The problem with a monarchy as opposed to a democracy, or if we look at it slightly differently, big government versus small government, is that it's a lot easier to flip, co-opt one person than, a million people, which very well could be the size of the US government, right? So these people who have been pushing for small government forever, right? They're saying that, the bigger the government, the fewer rights we have. Well, there's some truth to that, but they may have been wolves in sheep's clothing, like Ron Paul, who, when he was talking about what Trump is doing right now, was a lunatic, right? People on the right were calling him a lunatic, saying he's crazy. That's why they didn't vote for him. But he planted that seed, right? Dismantle the Department of Education, make the government smaller, audit the Fed, right? Things of that nature. Something that maybe 10, 15 years ago was considered crazy is just, some people still consider it crazy, right? But the people on the so-called right are all of a sudden all for it, right? And then you got his son, Rand Paul, talking about North American Union, the Amero, and being called a lunatic like 4 or 5 years, 6 years ago. Just planting those seeds for something that's going to happen and be accepted, I believe, right? I believe Papa Ron was a Scottish Rite Freemason, so, you know, I'm not like Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where I'll be able to present you with, a board full of evidence and make all the perfect connections between all the bad players. But I think I try to, anyway, get the gist of what's going on, right? If I can't necessarily connect the dots. But I mean, I know people who can connect the dots better than I ever could, and they'll spit names, books, publication dates, and theories, ideologies. Just like bang, 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 right? And then they'll turn around and they'll say Trump good. So it is what it is. I guess I'm a big picture guy. Always speak the truth. Live the truth. There's only one truth, right? So if we have a good king, then he'll do good, right? There's nothing to worry about so long as he's morally good. But the smaller the government, right, the less of a system of checks and balances there is, and the easier it is to flip them to be evil, right? Now, does Trump strike you as a morally upstanding individual? So, I mean, where is this whole thing headed, right? Well, in my opinion, he's laying the groundwork for a techno-fascist takeover of the US government. He is dismantling the institutions, and as rotten as they may be, it is a system of checks and balances, and it is a democracy. And so it's a lot harder to convince, thousands and thousands of people to do what you want them to do. than it is to just fire them. Get rid of them. Get rid of all the opposition so that you could do whatever you want to do. Right? Where the United States is moving and clearly moving in a very authoritarian direction, which, again, could be good so long as the guy in charge is good, is a godly man. But I mean, seeing as, his office or his sons or whoever office is 666, whatever the fuck avenue, I mean, is this a good person? Shout out to Dugin, right? They're all connected. There's something that connects them, right? Is it the good God or is it some other God that they believe in? I mean, it's pretty fucking clear who these people are. I don't understand why people who claim to be Christians, for example, can't see this. Well, I know why. I know why they can't see the forest from the fucking trees. Because these people have infiltrated their Christian institutions and they fooled them. They fooled you. So, is Trump a good king? If he is, well, it's really Vance, or maybe even someone who comes after him. And it could be a quote unquote Democrat. It really doesn't matter. Because the machine moves in the same direction, right? For example, Biden, when you look at his foreign policy regarding Ukraine, he wasn't there to destroy Russia. He wasn't there to beat Russia, right? Which is exactly what Trump is doing. He's not there to beat. They don't want Ukraine to win. Whether it's, I don't give a shit about the rhetoric. I don't give a shit about how the media spins it. At the end of the day, neither one of them wants Ukraine to win. Russia is weak as fuck. You just got to squeeze them a little bit, press a little bit, give Ukraine what they need. They had Russia on the back foot, retreating. If anyone in this war was making rapid advances and really showing you their potential, right, it was the Ukrainian armed forces. When Russia tried their blitzkrieg, they got their ass handed to them. But because Ukraine wasn't given what they needed, and Russian, the bears woke up from his slumber and started marching forward, however slowly but methodically. It's a big fucking bear, right? If you don't slash his throat or shoot him through the heart, he'll just keep fucking coming. You shoot him in the leg, right? You graze him with a bunch of bullets. Like, the fucking thing is just gonna keep coming at you. Ukraine didn't get the kill shot. Biden wasn't willing to give him the kill shot, and Trump is just a little bit more accelerationist, right? But they're moving in the same direction. At the end of the day, the U.S. machine is moving in the same direction, right? When Obama was ruling by decree, executive order, right? He was a commie, he was a socialist, he was a dictator, right? There's still in some fucking quote unquote freedom fighters basement the picture of Obama with the Hitler mustache on it, right? That they took to whatever rally they took it to. So these, the rhetoric was fine, and a lot of what people were saying was correct. I was agreeing, but now Trump is doing the same thing, and you have increasingly fewer and fewer people. Well, he's accelerating. I mean, how many executive orders has this guy signed already? And now he's looking to remove the apparatus, challenge the apparatus that's put in place, the system of checks and balances that will, that has the power to stop this guy ruling by just decree, right? He's looking to remove all the impediments to this one man rule. It might take years, but if it keeps going in this direction, US is going to be a fascist state within a decade or two, right? It took Hitler and his party a while too. Except when his insurrection failed, right? They were able to put him in prison. This fucking guy got immunity. So, I mean, history doesn't repeat, but it sure as hell rhymes. Anyway, so yeah, this is clearly, right? Technofascism. This is what you're gonna get unless you wake up, US. You got these incel dorks raised by the computer running around wreaking havoc inside the US government, right? You got this fucking guy, Trump, who was brought into American consciousness like never before by this so-called left-wing media, right? Fake news, who had a show on TV, reality TV, right? Where he was just firing people. Predictive programming, anyone? Come on, people. Have we forgotten how this shit works? Who is now running his own reality TV show from the White House, right? Transparency. After they have the real meeting behind closed doors and then they come out for the 10, 15 minutes, to give you something, all you dupes, in front of the cameras. Now he's running his reality TV show from the White House and he's got a disciple or, I don't know, the future president of the United States or shadow government coming out of the shadows. I don't fucking know. Elon Musk doing the firing, right? Like Donald Trump's reality TV show is playing out right in front of us in real time. And I got these so-called right-wingers telling me how Zelensky's an actor. I mean, really? This is the truther movement. Bunch of fucking idiots. Dupes. So, I mean, I thought we were against the New World Order. I'm going to keep saying that. I thought we were against the North American Union. But Trump's out there talking about annexing Canada, taking over Panama, Greenland, sending troops to Mexico to quote unquote fight the cartels. Now I'm not pro cartels or anything like that, but fuck those people, right? But it's in a way a system of checks and balances. As evil as those fuckers are, they have their own idea for how the world should be run, and they stand in the way of the North American Union. So in that sense, I guess they're good. And if Trump or Vance, if it is to be Vance, another fucking actor, is able to send troops to quote unquote fight the cartels, send troops into Mexico, I mean, you think they're just going to withdraw them without getting what they want? And what is it that they want, right? Mexico as a vassal state to the United States. Like China wants Russia to be theirs, right? And Russia wants China to be theirs. So they're not all in agreement on everything, but they're, insofar as being big picture people, they're on the same page. They just got to work out the fine details and, kill each other and mostly us in the process. But at the end of the day, the ideology is the same. Some type of occult, satanic, if you will, authoritarian takeover, politics. is to rule over us. And in order to be able to do that, they have to take away our rights. That's why you have these right wingers, right? It's even in the fucking name, guys. It's in your fucking name, you fucking idiots. Telling us how we don't have any human rights. We only have duties. Well, gee, motherfucker, they're one and the same, idiot. Why? Why are rights and duties one and the same? Because they're both right. They're both correct. And you're supposed to be on the right. Not a fucking leftist. Taking away people's rights, telling them they don't have any rights. What gives you the right to have duties? Huh? But we don't have any rights. We just have duties. Every duty is a right. My duty not to kill you is your right to life. Duh! Why? Because it's right. It's correct. Morons. Absolute morons. Intelligent, educated, smart morons. Dugin's Black Mass by Andrei Loshak. So, a Russian, Ukrainian, some kind of Cyrillic writing Slav. So, someone who's into this shit probably and maybe knows what they're talking about. Maybe. And maybe, just maybe, actually speaks the truth. I see that everyone has been posting the video of an old public appearance by Soviet dissident and Russian liberal politician Valeria Novodvorskaya, in which she contemptuously labeled Alexander Dugin a petty fraudster interested in nothing but money. The consensus is also that Dugin is a windbag who excites only Western political scientists, a few half-witted Siloviki, and certain bohemians who snorted their brains out. I think we shouldn't underestimate the philosopher's influence, no matter how crazy we find his ideas, especially because those ideas tend to become reality. Is this a case of liberal, right? Whether they know it or not, um, kind of underestimating a threat, right? In a way, telling you, yeah, that guy over there, yeah, he's got some crazy ideas. I disagree, but he's, he's not that dangerous. Yeah, right. I remember accidentally attending a lecture by Dugin on, yeah, this guy is, he knows what's up, so long as he's telling the truth. I think he is. On, quote, angelic entities, unquote, in the late 90s, right? So, angelic entities, are these angels or fallen angels, right? Both, maybe. It was an absolutely unbearable exercise in transcendental sophistry, dealing mainly with the image of Lucifer, the fallen angel, and featuring extensive quotations from Aleister Crowley. Oh, what do you know? Is that why he uses some of the same symbolism for the covers of his books? Because he's a Satanist? So I tried reading one of his books, but like this guy tells you, it's transcendental sophistry. It's garbage. It's absolute fucking garbage. You gotta be. Let me not go there. I guess it's not relevant. I guess I went and poured myself a tiny cup of coffee. I mean, it's almost 3 a.m., right? About time. Where was I? Yeah, I think it was Foundation of Geopolitics or something like that that I tried reading by Dugin, but it was such fucking garbage and just fucking so much nonsense in there that I just skimmed through the fucking book. But somewhere in there, one of his books, he was talking about how um, Russia needs to, how we, right, they need to sponsor, support, these so-called left-wing destabilizing movements in the US government, like Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ, right? In order to basically divide and conquer the United States, polarize the population, and weaken American democracy, right? Because you can you can have a lot of differences domestically, right? But insofar as foreign policy, everyone has to be on the ball in order for the United States democracy to survive from at least any external threats. But I mean, I don't know what the fuck I'm trying to say, because this is really what Dugin is talking about, is an internal threat. So forgive me. I don't. I had something I wanted to say, but I forgot what it was exactly. Again, it's 3 a.m. I hadn't been sleeping well. But anyway, yeah, he was talking about how, well, he's basically telling you what Yuri Bezmenov told us decades ago. It's been like, what, 40 years now or something like that? That these sort of movements are going to be pushed to demoralize the United States population so that they don't know whether they're coming and going. They have no clue what's good, what's right. Meaning they're ready to accept anything. And that's exactly what's happening. And Musayev, or whatever the fuck his name is, if he even exists, this supposedly a former KGB agent, even though once a KGB agent, forever a KGB agent. And yes, I believe Yuri Bezmenov is the exception to the rule. Okay, that happens too. But yeah, Musayev coming out and calling Trump a Russian KGB agent, that's just another tactic to divide Americans, right? Straight from the people whose stated goal is to do that. But it's guys, it's not KGB anymore, unless we're talking about Belarus. It's FSB, right? This is not the Soviet Union anymore. This is Russia. Oh, so they're back to their roots, you mean? Is that what you're saying? Their imperialist, murderous, genocidal roots? Shut up. Really? I guess when the Democrats win, the United States is a completely different entity, even though their policies are basically the same when it comes to the shit that matters, right? Rule by decree, destroy democracy, and grab up more and more and more fucking power at the cost of the people while impoverishing them. The standard of living in the United States is going down, isn't it? Anyway, so yeah, the United States is being divided and conquered by, well, the globalists, shadow government, right? The same ideology faction that has been in power in Russia for a very, very long, or at the very least is in power there now, right? Putin, let me remind everybody who used to seem to care about these things, is the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab's young global leader. That's who he is. And even though Trump poses as someone that's opposed to the World Economic Forum, he keeps visiting and speaking there. Just as, all these other American presidents before him. I mean, America is developing smart city technologies and getting ready to build them, right? Starting to build them. So is Russia. Putin, the great savior, right? I mean, he complied with all the vaccine mandates. Vaccinated the fuck out of their people. I mean, it's just like, why is he the good guy? And then Trump with his Operation Warp Speed. Yeah? So, yeah, let's keep reading. Aleister Crowley, right? This is a Russian Orthodox old believer guy. Well, I don't know what he is currently, but that's what he used to be, right? Some type of neo-pagan slash Christian blob. Russia is not a Christian country. So much as Putin has pushed this propaganda that they're like the saviors of Christendom and how they're going to, they're on the forefront of this spiritual battle, existential battle, and where Christianity has to reign supreme, right? That's just getting pious and good people to do evil things. That's all that is about. This fucking guy is murdering perhaps the most orthodox of all Christians out there. Maybe. I'm not even saying that necessarily, but definitely Orthodox Christians on the surface of things. He rolled in his tanks, started bombing fucking churches and killing Orthodox Christians, and he's the defender of Christendom. Like, how retarded do you have to be to believe some shit like that? Abandoned all the Christians in Syria because it wasn't convenient, because it was all talk. Abandoned all the Christians in Armenia because it was all talk. And now he's murdering Christians in Ukraine. But he's on the forefront of Christendom. What? Are we retarded? He's there to save Christianity. The guy has murdered more Christians in the 21st century than anybody. And he's the savior. This is 1984, and it's insanity. Everything's upside down. Give me a fucking break. He's got Muslims murdering Christians. But he's here to save Christendom. Can all the retarded people raise their hands? Can you at least fess up and be like, yeah, I'm retarded. I fell for it. Just admit you fell for it. But it's not too late to just speak the truth. Anyway, there were about 20 people of indeterminate age and gender in the auditorium. This guy's an OG. I thought at the time that perhaps they too were fallen angelic entities who had come to listen to a lecture about themselves. In the mid-noughties, I ran into Dugin at a current 93 gate at Ikra Club. He clearly loved English apocalyptic folk music for its commitment to Nazi Satanism. His daughter, Daria, apparently did too. I recently saw a post about how she did the Nazi salute at a Death in June gig in Moscow. Like Elon? Like Steve Bannon? Oh, so you want to throw Hillary and all the rest of them in there too? Be my fucking guest. I'm not going to defend them. Oh, but they did it too, so Trump a good guy because they're bad guys. Or Elon did it, and they did it, and, what are you saying? What are you saying? Woke, right? In an interview, Dugin said to Coyle, quote, before Eurasianism gained popularity, we wanted to drag Coyle to Eurasia and put him up at our places in order to promote our ideas with their assistance. Unfortunately, the authorities chose Gerard Depardieu, deciding that Coyle were too marginal. What? Unquote. I'm out of context, but okay. The traditional sexual orientation of the English musicians didn't trouble the traditionalist Dugin back then. The non-traditional. Oh, just like the AFD in Germany, right? Traditionalist lesbian who's really just a husband, and you believe her because, well, she's going to get the immigrants out, right? It's not like they put the immigrants in there in the first place so that you would vote for them. No, no. Before Eurasianism gained blah blah blah. It was also in the noughties that I visited the summer camp of Dugin's Eurasian Youth Union, a built the pre-Z, right? A building at the dilapidated holiday resort near Zvenigorod that had been rented for this purpose. There were not many people in attendance, about 30 or 40. Many were wearing Russian peasant shirts because Dugin had realized that his Nazi Satanist strategy had no great future in modern Russia, and so he had declared himself an old believer. Before meals, a round-faced bearded man would proclaim in the bass voice, "Angels at the table!" And those present would cross themselves. What? This is a cult. At night, the young people lined up with lighted torches on the banks of Moscow River to take the oath of a Eurasian. Back then, Dugin adored the black magic ceremonies and rituals with which Crowleyanism abounds. He and composer and musician Sergei Kuryokin had bonded over this stuff, and Dugin had ignited Kuryokin with fascist ideas, eventually burning him to a crisp. The wording of an oath was a pompous and not bereft of poetry. I recall that the word will was introduced more often than curses against Atlanticist liberals. Will and mind, will and mind. The puny lads and lasses repeated in unison after Dugin. Cult. It would have smacked of triumph of the will were it not for the outward appearance of the young Eurasians, which was far from Aryan perfection. At the time, right? Just like Dugin, just like um, Putin, right? Clearly, mixed. They're Mongols mixed with Slavs or something like that. Turkic, they're Eurasian. These aren't Aryans, right? And they're not pure. And you know, just saying, just throwing that out there, right? These guys are, a little bit Asian, a little bit European. For those of you who supposedly care about this shit. But, these so-called right-wingers, they don't have any fucking values. Let's just keep it real. They don't have any values, actually. Where were we? Frankly, I'm not a great connoisseur of Dugin's philosophy. It is obvious, though, that Dugin is obsessed with the idea of bringing the world to a purgatory apocalypse, after which the great Eurasian Empire and the end will be born. And he has quite consistently pursued this goal. When the conservative turn dawned, Dugin moved away from occult postmodernism, focusing instead on the topic of tradition. Right? He's a shapeshifter. This guy's a fucking shapeshifter. I thought we cared about that type of stuff. For which there was a sudden demand. The Kremlin had been frantically searching for new ideologue genes, with which I don't know what that means, with which to oppose the official enemy. Liberalism. Dugin finally turned from a bohemian guru into a sought-after ideologue of the regime. There is one convincing bit of evidence that speaks to this being the case. In 2014, Dugin ends his programmatic article about the ideology of the new Russia as follows. Quote, Russia will be either Russian, that is Eurasian, that is the core of the great Russian world, or it will disappear, right? 1984. But then it would be better that everything disappear. There's simply no reason to live in a world without Russia, right? And then Putin repeated that same idea a few years later. So for those who say that Dugin is a nobody, I mean, okay, evidence. Why do we need such a world if there is no Russia there? Which is what Putin said, right? Dugin had seemingly managed to captivate the dictator with his most terrible idea, hastening the world's end. In this context, Daria's death appears especially ominous. I haven't read this article before. Many people were struck by the young woman's funeral today. They were struck by the behavior of a father who had lost his daughter but delivered propaganda tirades in an unnaturally trembling voice and appealed to Russians to fight to the bitter end. Moreover, I had the strange feeling that Dugin was directing this spectacle. I doubt that the dim-witted groper Leonid Slutsky could have so creatively paraphrased the Nazi slogan. Perhaps I am mistaken, but this looks like as if it came from the playbook of the stagger of occult mystery plays and black masses and not that of a crook from the State Duma. If we assume for a second that this is true, it really gets creepy. Quote, we will go to heaven and they will just drop dead, unquote. Putin said when asked to explain what the phrase, quote, we don't need a world without Russia, unquote, had meant. This is exactly what Dugin calls the, quote, hermeneutics of the world's end, unquote, only couched in a dialect of the back streets, which the dictator speaks fluently. It sometimes seems to me that they have already made their quote unquote final decision. They have not only canceled Ukraine, they have canceled the world. So, on the one hand, right, the rational right is so against cancel culture. But then you get a chainsaw waving lunatic into the White House who doesn't wear a suit, by the way, canceling everything he can, right? And that's somehow cool. Canceling US soft power, canceling all people's pensions, perhaps, canceling that which makes American democracy strong, the system of checks and balances. And what cool. The motherfucking guy brought a chainsaw to the White House, to the US government, and it's just slashing all types of shit, canceling, firing, and, you know, I guess we're cool with cancel culture now. I keep telling you, they're all leftists, all of them. It's real simple, right? If you're anti-liberty, you're a leftist. I don't know. Maybe that's enough for this one. I gotta go clean a carburetor on my bike. It's 3:11, so about that time. Maybe I'll make more coffee. I don't know. I don't know how to sum up this bitch ass rambly all over the fucking place video. I don't do outlines, all right? And I rarely clean my room. It's just how I roll. Messy as fuck. But yeah, the truth movement was slandered, painted as a whole bunch of fucking lunatics because it was infiltrated and taken over by bad actors to a point where they basically killed it and it's become mainstream, right? Except it left all of its good ideas behind because, well, they're really just bad ideas. And you can't talk about that. You can't paint them as what they are. You have to spin it a different way. So, once again, the North American Union and the almost inevitable authoritarianism that will have to be put in place in order for that to happen. We were supposed to be against that. And now some of the same people that were against that are just like, well, I mean, yeah, whatever. I guess so. I'm not sure. Well, at least we got rid of the gays, you know. But, you know, God put them here too. So maybe, we should make room for those guys too. You know what I mean? not let them rule our lives or anything, but, tolerate them maybe, wouldn't that be, oh, I don't know, liberal? And these fucking guys lie, like Trump lies so much. I'm not saying that, for example, USAID isn't corrupted. Yeah, there's definitely, and I know firsthand because I, sometimes follow some Ecuadorian news, and I know that they gave 20 G's, as it was reported in a local paper, to like a transgender theater in one of the big cities in Ecuador, right? Because the people here, by and large, they don't want any of that, right? Except there's a certain segment of the population, these gay guys, that fuck it. Maybe I'll make a video or mention it in another video. This one had gone on too long. But anyway, the point being that while there's definitely a lot that's wrong with USAID, at the same time, Trump lies and they exaggerate how much money they've given to the faggots. You know what I mean? And he's been caught up in these lies over and over and over again. Does anyone actually believe that Hamas got millions of dollars for condoms? Those people, they don't practice safe sex. They don't believe in any of that, right? Who puts a condom on when they're raping and pillaging? Like, millions of dollars for condoms to Hamas? Like, who believes that shit? And then in another instance, I don't remember the context exactly, but instead of transgenic, Trump, who obviously he just can't read, right? That's his excuse now. He can't read. Painted something as transgender instead of just calling it what it was, and it was another however many millions of dollars that was given to the gays, and here I am slashing the gays, canceling the gays. Yay! Lies. It's most of it is lies. Just like they got caught up because they can't read, right? Or they're liars, or both. Lying about, 300 plus year olds getting Social Security, which means nobody gets any, right? We have to cancel Social Security because some lie, right? Fuck. Oh, man. Techno-fascist takeover. Laying the groundwork for a techno-fascist takeover of the United States. All of a sudden, all the tech bros are right-wingers. No, they're not! Right? But when they were on Biden's side, or the Democratic, so-called Democratic Party side, right? We call them out for what they were. And now that they're, pro-Trump, I guess, or they're part of this administration, they're giving money to him, right? Shadow government, not so much in the shadows, giving. It's the tip of the iceberg. Don't get me wrong, but they're giving lots of money to Trump, helping to elect him, right? Because Russia interference. Fucking Elon Musk bought Twitter in order to elect Trump, apparently, and stifle free speech. Right? But they threw you a bone, and like JD Vance gets up on the podium in Europe and says free speech a few times. This is it's just a lie. It's just a way to. He's just clothing himself in sheep's clothing when he's really just a wolf, really. But yeah, now that all the tech bros are like giving money to Trump and they're pro this government and they say free speech once in a while, I guess would we tolerate them now? No, the honest thing to say would be to admit that you're a leftist. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're a leftist. Maybe because you were duped to be so. These guys could say free speech as much as they want, but I mean, so long as they restrict access to the soapbox, the public square, it's meaningless, right? Because Elon Musk could just tweak the algorithm to promote certain types of speech, which is really just suppressing other types of speech. All of a sudden, they just put a slightly different spin on the control of speech, right? They put a slightly different spin on it, and people think that they're pro free speech somehow. Trump calls certain members of the media or certain media outlets illegal, right? Because they don't say what he wants them to say, and he bans them from the White House. But his VP goes on the podium and says free speech a few times, so they're the good guys. Get the fuck out of here. And they're only talking about free speech. That's the only thing they're talking about. Because they control the public square. Has Trump ever gotten on that podium and any podium and talked about Christendom, Christianity, God, like really and honestly, human rights, God-given rights, the sanctity of human life? Has he ever done any of that? Well, it'd be kind of weird if he said that and then ended up bombing the fuck out of whoever Israel tells him to bomb the fuck out of. Supporting what Israel is doing in Gaza. Not all of those people are guilty. Not all of them, right? But instead of invading Israel, because human rights abuses and shit, he's helping them out. But I guess these are our saviors. You know what I mean? The guy that probably or wishes he had fucked his daughter, took quite a few flights with Epstein, who knows where, probably visited the island too. There's all these rumors of and witnesses coming forth talking about his sexual misconduct, right? That's the guy that somehow the Christian conservative right got behind. That guy. Because Marco Rubio, who's really just a weakling and an opportunist and a puppet, and he just wants to keep his job. And he'll say whatever the fuck they tell him to say, and he'll do exactly what they tell him to do. Right? Just because Marco Rubio put a cross, for Ash Wednesday on his forehead and got on TV showing you that, look at me, as if he were trying to exorcise some demons that had penetrated his soul after he started mingling with them. Just because Pete Hegseth has, some crosses tattooed on his chest, which really could just be interpreted as a form of imperialism, right? Murder. But hey, sign of the cross, so he's a good guy. Maybe he's just a crusader. Just because it's like they brought these certain members into the cabinet to like throw a bone to, the Christians and to get their vote maybe, and maybe make it appear like, go read some of the comments when Marco Rubio speaks with this, the sign of the cross on his forehead because it's Ash Wednesday. Oh, what an unabashed display of his Christian faith. What a good man. And, Trump's administration, oh, they're real Christians and all this other fucking nonsense. You know what I mean? It's just, that's all that it takes. That's all that it takes, right? They just put on a good face and The public's just like, yeah, we won. Really? Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. This is the truth movement is dead. It's been co-opted, and the people that still kind of have the right idea have been marginalized because they bought into the fatalism and the end of the world and destruction, and they've just gone off the handle, and in a sense they bought into the crazy. They became a little bit crazy. They've been marginalized, ridiculed, and nobody takes them seriously because even though they have right ideas, their minds are polluted with just shit that doesn't make any sense to anybody who's thinking rationally. They've been scared into, for the most part, not being rational, so no one takes them seriously. And then the people that are still, you would think, rational, and they're definitely intelligent, smart, turns out they don't actually have any values. They don't actually believe the things that they believed because they've been emotionally manipulated to hate the gays and all this other shit. So the guy that comes in and, you know, smacks the gays around a little bit, even though he probably himself takes it up the ass, or undresses little boys in public to kiss their bellies, right? That's your Christian crusader. that's that's the traditional guy. You know what I mean? It's the same people that supported the crazy because, you know, they're probably into it themselves, and they've used it to destabilize the system and to sneak into your hearts because they appear as the ones who are gonna, you know, slay the dragons, the LGBT demons, and all that other nonsense. Even though they're the people behind them are the same people who put that in place there in the first place in order for you to gain your trust and dupe you, right? All of a sudden, the rational people who are still to a large degree speaking the truth and professing to believe what's true, they turn a blind eye to all those things that, what, like less than 10 years ago, we all agreed was potentially leading us down the wrong path, right? North American Union, loss of human liberty. All of a sudden, all of those ideas got co-opted, and now liberty is evil because, well, it allows the gay to flourish. Even though all of that was just a fucking psyop to get you to vote for the Antichrist or fallen angel, someone like Trump. Because, you know, some people around him make the sign of the cross sometimes. Whatever the fuck that means for them, I don't know. Dugin makes the sign of the cross. He puts a whole bunch of crosses together. What does that mean to him? Right? Just because they pretend or they're somewhat loosely affiliated with some Christians, pseudo Christians, that somehow convinces people that they're the good guys because, again, well, they canceled the guy. So cancel culture's cool after all. It's just it's such a mind-boggling mindfuck, man. And the fact that so many people fall for it, and like, it's incredible how I find myself in this world where all the people who were just absolutely insane just a few months ago, propping up the gay and all that insanity nonsense, right, are the only ones actually making sense when it comes to what's going on with this guy Trump and US government. All of a sudden, they're the rational ones. And, you know, if there is any sort of like debate between the two sides, and this, if there is any sort of like truth movement left online, it's been reduced to basically arguing about what a woman is. This is the truth movement these days, right? That's so fucking regressive. I don't. And the rational right is engaging in this regressive conversation. Like, we don't know what a woman is. Like, people need to be convinced. We're gonna entertain these crazy fucking people because, well, why? Probably because, well, you're not sure either. And when no one's looking, you know what I mean? You indulge in a little bit of porn too, because, it's whatever. And when it comes down to it, I mean, just look at Nick Fuentes, right? Ultra conservative on the right, right? Take it up the ass too when no one's looking. But, Nick Fuentes and the like, they canceled the gay. Yay.